Close your eyes for a second and try to visualize this. The year is 897. Rome is restless, loud, fractured. Narrow alleyways echo with gossip. Soldiers march with suspicion in their eyes, and no one really knows who holds true authority anymore. And then, in the middle of all this tension, something happens. Something so bizarre that, if it weren't documented by multiple medieval sources, most people would assume it was a twisted legend. A deceased pope, buried for 9 long months, is dug up, still in a state of decay. He is dressed again in elaborate papal garments, placed on a throne-like seat, and dragged before a full ecclesiastical court, not symbolically, not metaphorically. Literally, a corpse on trial. And if stories like this stories that reveal just how strange human history can be capture your imagination, don't forget to subscribe, because today's tale is only the beginning. To understand why Rome reached such a grotesque moment, you need to step inside the political climate of the time. This wasn't the Renaissance Rome of artists and philosophers. This was a Rome hanging by a thread unstable, violent and desperate. Rome was carved up by powerful families who treated the papacy like a prize. Whoever controlled the pope controlled land, armies, alliances, legitimacy. In medieval Europe, political power meant nothing without spiritual approval. So nobles fought over the papacy like wolves fighting over meat. The central government of Rome was fragile. Kings were constantly being replaced. Barbarians and foreign rulers interfered constantly. The church, instead of calming the chaos, had become a battlefield itself. Bribery, assassinations, exiles, and forced ordinations were common. A pope might rule for years, or only for weeks. Some popes were placed on the throne at sword point. This was the world that produced the Cadaver Synod, and at the center of it all was Pope Formosus. And by the way, if these deep dives into medieval politics and lost corners of history interest you, let me know or subscribe, so I know to continue this long-form content. Formosus was not just another pope on the list of hundreds. He was ambitious, sharp, strategic, and his decisions changed the course of the Italian kingdoms. Before becoming pope, Formosus traveled extensively as a diplomat. He negotiated between kings, dukes, and princes. He built a web of alliances across Europe. But the more he accomplished, the more enemies he made. His biggest conflict was with the Spoleto family, one of the most dominant and feared noble houses in Italy. The Spoletos wanted absolute control of the papacy. They wanted a pope who was loyal, obedient, and useful to their dynasty. Formosus refused to play their game. He supported their rivals. He crowned different kings. He acted independently. To the Spoletos, this was treason, and they never forgot it. Even after his death, they wanted revenge. When Formosus died, the papacy went through rapid turnover. 2 popes came and went. Then Stephen VI took power. Historians still debate who Stephen truly was. Some believe he was merely a puppet for the Spoleto family, placed on the throne to destroy Formosus' legacy. Others believe Stephen was mentally deteriorating. Some accounts describe him as irrational, paranoid, prone to sudden rage. Another theory suggests he feared losing the papacy and needed to prove his loyalty to his political allies. Whatever the truth was, Stephen made the most shocking decision in papal history. He ordered the corpse of his predecessor to be exhumed and put on trial. Imagine the reactions in Rome. People whispered in the streets, "Is the Pope serious? Is this some kind of curse? Will God punish us for this?" But Stephen didn't care. He was determined to humiliate Formosus and erase him. This part of the story is often glossed over, but it is crucial and disturbing. Formosus' body had been buried for 9 months. When gravediggers opened the tomb, the smell alone would have been overwhelming. The body was fragile, the skin darkened and peeling. Bones were visible beneath the shrinking flesh. But Stephen wanted the corpse to look official. So the body was, carefully lifted, dressed in ornate papal robes, placed on a carved wooden chair, tied upright so it wouldn't collapse. Imagine the grim task of preparing a corpse for trial. Even the clergy responsible must have felt uneasy, performing rituals once meant for the living now for a rotting corpse. The Lateran Basilica was filled with clergy, soldiers, and silent onlookers. Torches flickered against stone walls. The air was thick with smoke and dread. Formosus' corpse was brought in and placed at the center, dressed in elegant robes that contrasted horrifyingly with his decayed body. A deacon stood beside him, assigned to speak on behalf of a dead man. When Stephen entered the hall, witnesses said he was trembling with fury. He shouted accusations at the corpse. "You violated sacred laws. You usurped the papacy. You deceived the church." The deacon answered for the corpse, responding weakly, trying to make sense of an impossible role. Some present wept. Some looked away. Some feared God's wrath for participating. This wasn't just a trial. It was a spectacle of madness. The verdict was predetermined. Formosus was declared guilty of all charges, but Stephen wanted more than a symbolic victory. He wanted humiliation. The papal garments were ripped from his decaying body. The fingers used for blessings were cut off. The corpse was dragged through the basilica. Finally, it was thrown into the Tiber River. This was meant to erase him from history, to make his papacy never have existed. But instead, the act horrified all of Rome. It crossed a line that even medieval brutality rarely crossed. News spread across the city. People were horrified, not just because a corpse was humiliated, but because a pope had defiled sacred tradition. Whispers turned to anger. Anger turned to rebellion. Riots erupted. People gathered near churches demanding punishment. Nobles who once supported Stephen now distanced themselves. Eventually, Stephen was arrested. He was locked in a dark, isolated cell, and several weeks later he was strangled to death. Symbolically, Rome had eliminated the man who brought shame upon the papacy. Supporters retrieved Formosus' body from the river. He was reburied with honor. Future popes annulled the Cadaver Synod. Some even restored the legitimacy of Formosus' ordinations. The Church tried desperately to erase the stain of the trial. Today, the Cadaver Synod stands as one of the most astonishing events in medieval history. Not because of violence, there were many violent events in that era, but because of the sheer absurdity and symbolism. A pope, driven by fear and hatred, accusing a silent corpse. A courtroom filled with men pretending they could question the dead. A rotting body dressed as a holy figure. A trial that served no justice, only revenge. It represents a moment when politics drowned out rationality. When faith was weaponized, when even the dead were not safe from power struggles. And that is why the Cadaver Synod remains one of the darkest curiosities in the history of the Church. If you enjoy exploring these strange, unbelievable corners of the past, remember to subscribe because there are many more hidden tales waiting to be uncovered.